She sent her new address to the wrong number, but the lonely millionaire who showed up changed. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Today's story is titled, She Sent Her New Address to the Wrong Number, but the Lonely Millionaire Who Showed Up Changed Her Forever. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had finally stopped, but the streets of Chicago still glistened under the pale streetlights. The night smelled faintly of wet asphalt and lilies from a nearby flower stand. Inside a small one-bedroom apartment, Mia Hart wiped her hands on a towel, exhausted from another double shift at the diner. The boxes stacked against the walls were proof of her fresh start, new place, new life, or at least that was what she hoped for. She picked up her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she texted her best friend. Finally moved in, 812 Willow Street, tiny but mine. Then she hit send. Seconds later, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. The message thread above her text was empty. She had sent her new address, but not to her friend. The number was unfamiliar. Great, she muttered under her breath. Just what I needed. Another mistake. She shrugged it off, dropped the phone onto the couch, and went to unpack the last of her kitchenware. 30 minutes later, a knock echoed through the apartment. Firm, steady, unexpected. Mia froze. No one knew her new address, no one except the landlord, and the number she had just texted by mistake. She hesitated before opening the door. Standing on the porch was a tall man in a dark gray suit, his hair damp from the drizzle. In his hand was a bouquet of white lilies, their scent mixing with the cool night air. His expression was calm but weary, the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile. "Hi," he said, his voice low and careful. "I think you sent this address to me." He lifted his phone, showing her message glowing on the screen. Mia blinked, speechless. "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I meant to text my friend, not—" "It is all right," he interrupted gently, his eyes softening. "It happens." There was something about the way he stood, composed, confident, but lonely, that made her hesitate before closing the door. The city lights reflected faintly off the silver watch on his wrist, the kind that cost more than her rent. "Are those for someone?" she asked, nodding toward the lilies. A faint smile ghosted across his lips. "They were supposed to be, but it seems I came to the wrong door. Or maybe not." The pause that followed was strange, not uncomfortable, but charged with something she could not name. "Well," she said finally, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, "since you came all this way, you can at least come in for a cup of coffee. It is instant, though. I am still moving in." He chuckled softly, the first trace of warmth breaking through his distant exterior. "Instant coffee sounds perfect." As he stepped inside, she noticed the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with rain. He set the flowers down on the counter carefully, like they meant more than they should. "I am Adrian Cole," he said. "Sorry for showing up uninvited." "Mia," she replied. "And no harm done. Just surprised, I guess." They stood in the quiet hum of the small apartment, steam curling from the mugs in their hands. Outside, the rain began again, tapping gently against the windows. Neither of them knew it then, but that single text, the wrong number, the simple mistake, was the beginning of something that would turn both their lives upside down. Because the man standing in her kitchen, the one who seemed so ordinary and lost, was not ordinary at all. He was the CEO of Cole and Hart Enterprises, a millionaire haunted by loneliness and obligations. A man who would soon make Mia an offer that sounded insane. "Marry me, just for 1 month." And that was how everything began. Mia nearly dropped her coffee mug when she heard those words. "Marry you," she repeated, her voice catching between disbelief and a nervous laugh. Adrian Cole sat across from her at the small kitchen table, his posture straight, his eyes calm but heavy with something she could not quite read. "Yes," he said simply, "but not the way you think. It is a contract, nothing more." The rain outside grew louder, filling the silence that followed. Mia stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or throw him out. "You show up at my door with flowers because of a wrong text, and now you want me to marry you? This is some kind of joke, right?" "I wish it were," Adrian replied quietly. "But I am serious. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a thin folder on the table. Inside was a printed document with his company's seal at the top. I need a fiancé for 30 days. After that, you will be free to go. No strings attached. You will receive compensation that could change your life. Mia felt her pulse quicken. Why me? It is Wonstamam, because you are not from my world, he said. You do not have anything to gain by pretending to love me. That makes you trustworthy. She laughed once, shaky and unsure. You do not even know me. I know enough, he said, his tone firm, but not unkind. And I am out of time. He explained that his late father's will required him to be married, or at least engaged before the upcoming board vote to secure control of the company. Without a partner by his side, his position and the jobs of hundreds of employees were at risk. Mia listened, torn between curiosity and the absurdity of it all. The man sitting in front of her was rich, powerful, and clearly desperate for something that money could not buy: credibility. She thought about her own situation, 2 months behind on rent, medical bills piling up from her mother's recent surgery, and her hours at the diner being cut again. Her life was a series of closing doors, and now here was one swinging wide open, even if it led into madness. What exactly are the terms? She asked finally. Adrian's eyes flickered with something like relief. You would live at my residence for the next month. Attend several public events with me. Smile for the cameras. Nothing more. You will receive $50,000 at the end, plus the full cost of your mother's treatment paid directly to the hospital. The room went quiet. Mia's throat tightened. That is a lot of money. It is also temporary, Adrian said softly. You will not owe me anything afterward. Mia leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. You are serious about this? I am, he replied. And I will have my attorney draft the agreement tonight, but you do not have to answer now. She looked at him for a long moment. Beneath his composed exterior, she saw exhaustion, the kind that no amount of wealth could hide. For the first time since he had walked in, he looked almost human. Finally, she whispered, I will think about it. Adrian nodded, standing slowly. That is all I ask. He placed a business card on the table, the silver letters catching the dim kitchen light. Call me tomorrow if you decide. When the door closed behind him, Mia sat in silence, staring at the lilies he had left behind. Their white petals glowed faintly under the kitchen bulb, fragile and beautiful, just like the insane offer she could not stop thinking about. By the time the sun rose over Chicago, she knew her answer. She needed the money. She needed a chance. And maybe, just maybe, she needed to see where this strange twist of fate would lead. Mia picked up her phone, took a deep breath, and dialed the number on the card. When Adrian's calm voice answered, she said quietly, I will do it. Adrian arrived the next morning in a black town car that looked completely out of place in Mia's narrow street. He stepped out, crisp in a dark suit, holding a single envelope. Good morning, he said. I assume your answer is still yes? Mia nodded, though her stomach was tied in knots. Yes. I read through the contract you sent last night. He handed her the envelope. Then we will sign it together. There are a few rules I need you to understand first. Sedetatu nu 71 in Didadem. Inside the envelope were 2 copies of the contract, printed on heavy paper and signed with his company's seal. Adrian read each condition out loud as if reciting a ritual. Rule 1. No personal involvement beyond the agreement. Rule 2. Maintain appearances in public. Rule 3. Absolute confidentiality. Rule 4. After 30 days, both parties part ways with no claims or obligations. Mia tried to sound calm, but her voice trembled slightly. And Rule 5? He looked up at her, a hint of something almost playful in his tone. Do not fall in love. She exhaled sharply, half laughing, half unsure. That one should be easy. They both signed. The faint scratch of the pen felt like a door closing behind her, and another one opening into a world she had never imagined. Adrian gestured to the car. Pack what you need. You will stay at my residence starting today. It will make the act more believable. Her heart thudded as she grabbed her small suitcase. The city flashed by the car windows, brick buildings, neon signs. The diner where she used to work fading into a blur until they reached the gates of Cole Manor. The mansion stood like something out of a film, all glass and stone, with fountains and trimmed hedges stretching across the front lawn. She hesitated before stepping inside. A housekeeper greeted them, bowing slightly. Welcome, Miss Hart. Mr. Cole, the wardrobe team is ready. Wardrobe team? Mia whispered as they walked through the marble foyer. Adrian smiled faintly. You will need a few adjustments before facing the press. In the next hour, her world shifted. A stylist fitted elegant dresses, a consultant explained dining etiquette, and a publicist rehearsed answers for questions she might face. Mia felt like an actress thrown into a role she had not auditioned for. When they were finally alone, she looked at him across the vast living room. You are really going all in on this, aren't you? I have to, Adrian said, his tone distant. Every eye in that boardroom wants to see me fail. It is no self-based self for greater deal. Something about the way he said it made her pause. Behind the confidence, there was fear not of losing money, but of losing purpose. As the evening fell, he walked her to the guest suite next to his. Dinner is at 7. The driver will take us to the gala afterward. It will be your first public appearance. She nodded, fingers brushing the contract still folded in her pocket. What happens if I mess up? Then I will handle it, he said quietly. You just have to stand beside me and smile. Later, as she stared at her reflection in the mirror hairstyled, diamonds sparkling on her borrowed gown, she could hardly recognize herself. Somewhere deep inside, the girl who had worked double shifts at a diner felt small and distant. Adrian appeared in the doorway, adjusting his cufflinks. For the first time, he looked less like a stranger and more like a man caught between two worlds, the one he built and the one he lost. You look perfect, he said. Mia managed a small smile. For someone pretending to belong, he met her gaze, his voice low. Then let us pretend together. And with that, they stepped out into the night, two strangers bound by a signature and a lie that was about to change everything. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and the soft clinking of champagne glasses. Reporters and investors filled the space, their voices rising and falling like waves. Adrian stood tall beside Mia, his hand resting lightly at her back as cameras flashed around them. This is it, he whispered, leaning close. Just smile and stay near me. I will do the talking. Mia nodded, clutching her small clutch purse, as though it could anchor her in this ocean of luxury. Her dress shimmered under the lights, and for a brief second she forgot who she was supposed to be. A waitress turned fiancé for hire, and simply felt the warmth of the moment. As they made their way through the crowd, Adrian introduced her to several board members. She greeted each one with polite grace, remembering every line the publicist had drilled into her that afternoon. But the whispers came quickly. Who is she? One woman muttered behind a glass of champagne. She came out of nowhere, another man said. Probably another publicity stunt. Mia felt the sting of their words, but Adrian's hand tightened slightly on hers, steadying her. He smiled as if he had not heard a thing. Ignore them, he said softly. They feed on gossip. At the far end of the room, a journalist from a business magazine approached, her smile sharp and practiced. Mr. Cole, congratulations on your engagement. We were all quite surprised by the announcement. This suiting waveranded naidef. Thank you, Adrian replied smoothly. It was unexpected for both of us. The journalist turned to Mia. Miss Hart, how did you two meet? Mia hesitated for a heartbeat, her mind flashing blank. Then she remembered the story they had rehearsed in art auction, a shared interest in community programs, and she delivered it word for word. The reporter nodded, but there was doubt in her eyes. Later that evening, as the music shifted to a slower rhythm, Adrian guided her to the dance floor. You did well, he murmured. I almost ruined it, she whispered. I froze. But you did not, he said. That is what matters. The 70 macadamations in the past in the signed about Ruktak in the Daffrant. The orchestra swelled around them, and for the first time, Mia saw a softness in his eyes that the cameras had never captured. He was not performing now. He was simply looking at her. Then came the sound that changed everything, a voice, loud and cutting from across the room. Adrian Cole's mystery fiancé. Care to tell us if this is real or another one of your corporate strategies? A reporter had stepped forward, microphone raised, cameras turning toward them. The crowd hushed. Adrian opened his mouth, but Mia spoke first. It is real, she said, her voice steady. And no matter what anyone thinks, sometimes two people meet by accident and it becomes the best mistake of their lives. Lumen Olsen down. The room erupted in a murmur, flashes blinding her eyes. Adrian stared at her, something unreadable flickering across his face, shock, pride, maybe even admiration. When the dance ended, he led her off the floor and into the quieter garden outside. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of roses. "You did not have to defend me," he said quietly. "I was defending myself too," Mia replied. "I may be pretending, but I am still human." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked at her the way a man looks when something inside him begins to shift. "You are not what I expected, Mia Hart." She smiled faintly. "Good. I would hate to be predictable." And it is the resale file. As they walked back inside, Adrian's hand brushed hers just for a second, light, uncertain, but real. And in that fleeting touch, the line between contract and connection began to blur. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of Cole Manor. Mia sat at the breakfast table, still replaying the night before in her mind, the dance, the questions, the moment she had spoken out for both of them. She was supposed to play a part, to stay quiet and agreeable, but something inside her had refused to stay silent. Adrian entered the room, dressed in a gray vest and crisp white shirt. He looked calm as always, but there was a new gentleness in his eyes when he saw her. "You handled yourself better than most people would have," he said, pouring a cup of coffee. "That reporter tried to trap you, and you turned it around." Mia managed a small smile. "I was terrified, but I figured someone had to say something." He nodded, studying her face as if trying to understand what made her different. "You reminded me that honesty still has power. My world does not see much of that anymore." They ate in quiet for a while until his phone buzzed. Adrian's expression hardened as he glanced at the screen. "The board wants a private dinner tonight," he said. "They probably want to test whether this relationship is genuine." "So another performance?" she asked softly. "Yes," he replied, setting the phone down. "But this time you will not have to fake your confidence." That afternoon, Mia went through a whirlwind of preparation, dress fitting, etiquette reminders, a few quick lessons on investor names. Yet, what unsettled her most was not the pressure of pretending. It was the way Adrian watched her now, as if every glance carried a question he could not yet ask. At the dinner, the long table glittered under crystal chandeliers. Wine flowed, laughter echoed, but the undertone was sharp with skepticism. One of the older directors leaned back and said with a smirk, "So, Miss Hart, what exactly attracted you to our CEO? His bank account or his charm?" "It is a longer action to one of the several gum." The table went still. Mia felt her cheeks burn. But before she could answer, Adrian spoke, his voice steady. "Her integrity," he said. "Something this company could use more of." The director chuckled awkwardly and looked away. Mia caught Adrian's eye and whispered, "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said quietly. "You saved me last night. It is my turn." Later, when the dinner ended and the guests drifted away, Adrian offered his arm. "Come with me," he said. He led her through a side door onto the terrace that overlooked the city. The night air was cool, and the lights below stretched endlessly toward the horizon. "I used to stand here alone," he said after a long silence. "Every night after my father died. I thought having everything meant I could not lose anything. But I was wrong. I lost myself first." Mia turned to look at him, surprised by the openness in his voice. "You do not sound like a man who has everything." "I am not," he admitted. "I have success, not peace." She looked down at the city lights. "Maybe peace is not something you earn. Maybe it is something you build with someone else." He met her eyes, and for a moment, the walls between them cracked. The air seemed to hum with something unspoken. Then he stepped back, slipping his hands into his pockets. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." Is rusting my bass into the sand sonnable. As she walked toward her room, Mia glanced over her shoulder. Adrian was still standing there, staring out over the city, his silhouette framed by the glow of the skyline. Inside her room, she closed the door and pressed a hand to her heart. She told herself it was only the role she was playing, that she could not afford to feel anything real. But the truth had already begun to take root. What started as a lie was slowly, quietly, becoming something neither of them had expected. The following week moved in a blur of public appearances, meetings, and carefully arranged smiles. Every time Mia appeared beside Adrian, the cameras clicked, and the headlines grew louder. "The mystery fiancé of Adrian Cole. Waitress turned heiress?" Each article seemed to dig deeper into her past, twisting the story to fit the gossip. At first she tried to ignore it. She reminded herself that this was temporary, a role, a paycheck, a deal. But as the days passed, she began to notice small things about Adrian that did not fit the image of the cold millionaire everyone believed he was. He stayed late in his office to personally read employee letters. He funded scholarships under anonymous names. He never raised his voice, even when the pressure was crushing. One night, Mia brought him a cup of tea as he sat in his study, surrounded by piles of documents. The soft light from the desk lamp caught the fatigue in his face. "You do not have to work all night," she said gently. He looked up, surprised to see her still awake. "Old habit," he said with a faint smile. "It feels easier to keep moving than to stop and think." She set the cup beside him. "You can only outrun loneliness for so long." Adrian's smile faded, replaced by silence. Then, after a long pause, he spoke quietly. "My father built this company from nothing. He expected me to double it, to never show weakness. But the truth is, I do not even know what he wanted me to be. I spent so many years trying to prove myself that I forgot what it feels like to live." "This sea were Afford." Mia leaned against the doorway watching him. "You are proving something now," she said softly. "That power does not mean being heartless." He glanced up, their eyes meeting. For a moment, the air felt different, warmer, fragile, real. "Mia," he said quietly, "you make all of this seem less empty." Her breath caught. "This? The contract?" "No," he said. The silence. Neither of them spoke again. The only sound was the clock ticking somewhere behind them. The next morning, Adrian suggested they take a drive out of the city. "No cameras, no reporters," he said, "just a break." They drove for hours until the skyline gave way to rolling fields and quiet roads. They stopped at a small roadside diner. Ironic, Mia thought, considering how much of her life had been spent in one. Over pancakes and coffee, they laughed about everything that had gone wrong during their first gala, about his stiff dancing and her nervous smile. For once, they were not CEO and contract fiancé. They were just two people trying to breathe. When they returned to the car, Adrian paused before starting the engine. "I cannot remember the last time I laughed like that," he said. Mia smiled. "Maybe you should do it more often." He looked at her, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "Maybe I will." The drive back was quiet but not awkward, the kind of quiet that feels like peace. When they reached the city limits, the first flashes of paparazzi lights appeared in the distance. The spell broke instantly. Back at the manor, as Mia stepped out of the car, a voice called from behind them. "Mr. Cole, is it true you are marrying her for inheritance rights?" The question cut through the night like a blade. Adrian's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, his assistant hurried over. "Sir, you should see this," she said, holding out a tablet. On the screen was a headline. "Sources claim Adrian Cole's engagement is a business contract." The color drained from Mia's face. Everything they had built, the fragile trust, the warmth, the laughter, suddenly felt like it could crumble in a second. Adrian met her eyes, the calm mask returning to his face. "Do not worry," he said quietly. "I will handle it." But deep down, Mia could see something had changed. The line between pretending and feeling had blurred too far. And now, someone out there was determined to expose the truth before either of them was ready to face it. By morning, the rumor had already exploded across every business channel. The words contract marriage followed Mia's name like a stain that would not wash away. Reporters camped outside Cole Manor, their cameras flashing through the iron gates. Every time she stepped near a window, she could see the headlines scroll across television screens. Inside, the air felt colder than ever. Adrian stood in his office, his back to her, staring out at the gray skyline. The calm that usually wrapped around him like armor had cracked. "Someone leaked the document," he said finally, his voice low and steady but trembling underneath. "Only 3 people had access to it." Mia swallowed hard. "You think it was me?" He turned around slowly. The look in his eyes made her chest tighten. "I do not want to believe that," he said. "But right now the board believes you did." Her throat burned. "Adrian, you have known me for weeks. I would never." "I know what you would not do," he interrupted, "but they do not. And they are threatening to call off the merger if I do not end this engagement immediately." "So that is it?" she whispered. "You are just going to walk away?" He closed his eyes for a moment. "If I stay with you, I lose everything my father built. Thousands of jobs, decades of work." Mia took a step back, her heart pounding. Then maybe you should not have offered to marry someone you did not trust. Adrian flinched, as if the words had struck him. It was supposed to be simple, he said quietly. But nothing about you has ever been simple. The silence that followed felt heavier than the walls around them. Mia took a deep breath, blinking back the sting in her eyes. You know what hurts the most? I was starting to believe this could be real. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and for a brief moment, regret softened his face. Mia, he began, but she stepped back. Do not, she said, shaking her head. You made your choice. That night, she packed her things in silence. The white lilies on the kitchen counter had begun to wilt, their petals curling at the edges. She touched them gently, remembering the night he first appeared at her door. It felt like a lifetime ago. As she was about to leave, the housekeeper appeared in the hallway. Miss Hart, she said softly. Mr. Cole wanted me to give you this. It was an envelope, her payment, exactly as promised. The contract had been fulfilled to the letter. She stared at it for a long time before setting it on the nearest table, untouched. Tell him I do not want his money. Then she walked out into the rain. Across town, Adrian sat alone in his office, the city lights reflecting off the glass walls. The board had voted to suspend his position until the investigation ended. His empire, his father's legacy, was slipping through his hands. But all he could think about was the look in Mia's eyes when she walked away. His assistant entered quietly. Sir, we traced the leak. It was not her. It came from inside the communications department, someone working with the rival firm. Adrian's chest tightened. The words hit like a blow. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. Find her, he said, now. But Mia had already disappeared. Her phone was disconnected, her apartment empty. All that remained of her was the small notebook she had left on his desk, pages filled with notes from her lessons, tiny sketches in the margins, and one final line written in her neat handwriting. The hardest part of pretending is realizing which moments were real. Adrian sank into his chair, the weight of it all finally breaking through. He had lost the company, his father's approval, and the only person who had ever looked at him like he was more than his last name. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. For the first time in years, Adrian Cole did not reach for work or strategy. He simply sat in the dark, listening to the rain, and wondered if it was too late to fix what he had destroyed. 2 weeks passed, and the city moved on. But Adrian Cole did not. The scandal had cost him his chairmanship, his reputation, and the only woman who had ever seen him as a man instead of a title. Each morning he walked into his empty office, his reflection staring back at him in the glass walls that once made him feel powerful. Now they only mirrored his loneliness. Then one afternoon his assistant rushed in with a trembling voice. Sir, you need to see this. She handed him a tablet showing a live stream from the city's largest charity gala, an event that Mia had dreamed of volunteering for when she was still just a waitress. The caption below the video read, Community Arts Program for Underprivileged Youth launches tonight. There she was, Mia, standing on a small stage in a simple blue dress, speaking into the microphone with the same calm courage he remembered. This project began as a dream, she said, but it grew because someone once taught me that kindness and belief are stronger than wealth. The managation making sal that one of bidding for Morchino. The audience applauded. Adrian's throat tightened. Without thinking, he grabbed his coat and headed out. By the time he arrived at the venue, the gala was ending. People filed out with smiles and pamphlets, while photographers lingered near the exit. Through the crowd, Adrian spotted her packing away boxes of art supplies, her hair tied back, her focus on helping the volunteers. Mia, he called softly. She froze. Slowly, she turned toward him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the crowd faded until only the two of them existed in the quiet between heartbeats. You should not be here, she said finally. The cameras will follow you again. I do not care, he said. I only care that you hear me out. She shook her head. You made it very clear what I was to you. A problem to fix, a risk to remove. Adrian took a step closer, his voice low but steady. I was wrong. The leak, the scandal, it was not you. I found out too late. Mia's eyes widened, disbelief flickering across her face. Then why are you telling me now? Because I cannot lose you again, he said. You were never part of the lie, Mia. You were the only real thing in it. She looked down, her fingers tightening around the box she held. It does not change what happened, Adrian. You did not trust me when it mattered. This otter was then. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, one of the white lilies she had left behind at the manor, pressed and preserved between glass. This was all that stayed after you left, he said softly. I kept it because it reminded me of the truth I was too afraid to face. Mia blinked back tears, her voice barely a whisper. And what truth is that? That love is not a contract, he said. It is a promise, and I am ready to make it for real. The words hung between them, fragile and trembling. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of pretense, but all she found was sincerity, raw and unguarded. Adrian, she began, but he gently interrupted her. I have arranged a press conference tomorrow. I am going to tell them everything. The deal, the lie, all of it. I would rather lose every share of my company than live another day pretending I do not love you. Mia's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since she had left, she saw the man she had believed existed underneath the suit, the one who had offered her coffee in a rain-soaked apartment, the one who had laughed with her over pancakes. Then do it, she said quietly. Tell them the truth, and maybe I will believe it too. He nodded, his chest heavy but hopeful. Then meet me tomorrow. Same place, same time. And he will. As she turned to leave, Adrian stood alone under the fading lights of the hall, the pressed lily in his hand. Tomorrow, the world would finally hear the truth, but more importantly, she would. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt something he had almost forgotten existed: hope. The next morning, the city woke to headlines announcing that Adrian Cole, once one of the most guarded CEOs in America, was about to make a public statement that could cost him everything. Reporters flooded the steps of the Cole Foundation headquarters, their cameras already aimed at the podium. Inside, Adrian adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, his reflection steady but solemn. For the first time, there was no script, no legal counsel whispering in his ear, and no contract to protect him. Just truth. His assistant approached carefully. Sir, are you sure about this? Once you say it, there is no going back. Adrian gave a faint smile. That is exactly the point. I have spent my life hiding behind control. It is time to show who I really am. Outside, the crowd buzzed as he stepped up to the microphone. Flashes went off instantly, but Adrian's voice cut through the noise, calm, clear, and unwavering. Good morning. I called this press conference to clarify something that has been twisted into a scandal. The rumors about a contractual engagement are true, but what is also true is that the woman involved, Miss Mia Hart, had no part in deceiving anyone. If anyone deserves blame, it is me. Murmurs rippled through the reporters. Adrian continued. When I met Mia, I was a man who believed that love could be managed like a business deal. But she showed me that integrity and kindness are worth more than every dollar I own. So today, I am stepping down as CEO. I am taking responsibility, not to save face, but to start over honestly. He paused, scanning the crowd. Cameras flashed wildly, but he was not looking at them. He was looking for her. At the back of the room, Mia stood among the reporters, dressed simply, her hands trembling slightly as she watched him. Adrian smiled, relief flickering across his face. If you are here, he said softly into the microphone, then you already know the rest. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to make things real. The room fell silent. Then, as the conference ended, he stepped away from the podium and walked toward her. The crowd parted, flashes still bursting like lightning. When he reached her, he stopped just a few feet away. Mia met his eyes, her voice steady but full of emotion. You just gave up everything. Adrian shook his head. No, I gave up what was never real. I would rather have one honest life with you than a lifetime of pretending. For a long moment, they stood there in the quiet chaos, two people who had been broken by circumstance but rebuilt by truth. Finally, Mia took a step forward, her voice soft but sure. Then I guess we start over. He smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that reached his eyes. No contracts, no conditions. She nodded. Just us. Outside the building, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant applause from the reporters who had just witnessed something rare: authenticity. Weeks later, the Cole Foundation announced a new project, the Heart Initiative, a community arts and education program dedicated to helping young people chase their dreams. Mia became its director. Adrian, no longer CEO, became her partner in life and in purpose. One evening, as the city lights glowed through their apartment window, Mia opened the same small notebook she had once left behind. On the last page, written in her handwriting, were the words she had forgotten she had added. Sometimes the wrong message reaches the right person. Adrian glanced over her shoulder, smiled, and slipped his arm around her waist. That text changed everything, he said. Mia laughed softly. It did. The best mistake I ever made. As the night settled around them, the city outside seemed quieter, lighter, as if it too had exhaled. And for the first time, both of them understood that love built on truth did not need grand gestures or perfect timing, only the courage to stay when everything else falls apart.